Okay.
Is there a motion to approve minutes?
Not yet. You want to review them first? Or have you already reviewed
I
them?
already looked at them.
And you're okay with them?
I am, yeah.
I mean, just give everyone a moment.
Yeah.
I reviewed them.
You reviewed them too?
I mean, it's
So
not
I'll-
like they were pages and pages, Rick. It's pretty.
I don't know how quick you read, Rich.
I had a couple days too.
Yeah, I did send them out 24 hours in advance at least. I
You
know.
did, that was very thoughtful of you.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from the January 23, 2024 meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Okay.
motion approved.
Let me get my-
All right, so now we're on to discussion on prioritizing departmental capital projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Before you this evening are all of the departmental requests that we received since our last meeting of all capital improvement projects that were being proposed.
Okay.
This is all of it.
Oh, the whole thing?
The whole thing, yeah.
Wow, okay.
And so, they're not in any particular order, but they are, we have requests from the Highway Department, from the Council on Aging, from the wastewater treatment plant, fire, police, and general administration, Board of Selectmen, for this building.
Okay.
So, there are various requests for various different projects. Obviously, we cannot, afford to do them all in one fiscal year. They need to be addressed throughout multi-fiscal years. And so I'm not sure if the board would like to, go through the requests, kind of look at them, and then maybe talk about trying to establish a rating system as to how you want to prioritize the requests from the different departments.
So my thought right now is that there's so many of these, I don't know how we're gonna go through them, like right now.
Mhm.
Maybe better. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but, like,
Yeah,
this is
I-
homework
Yeah,
now.
Yeah.
Because this is a lot. I
I-
mean, if
I
there were
agree.
one or two of them, we could probably whip through it, but,
I
yeah,
agree.
this is a lot. I would like to, like, sit down and
Make
read these
notes and-
through, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Excuse me.
So, I
That's
mean,
completely understandable.
in terms of prioritization, I think we just have to look and if we think there's a need or maybe some of these are lower cost that we
Yep.
can bang out quicker.
Yep.
I mean, there's one here for 850,000, so that's not gonna go quick, but some of
Right.
these others, I mean, maybe 65, I don't know if there's one for something less than that,
25.
I was.
25, I mean, something like that, we may
Yeah.
be able to do, even if it's not
So,
super important,
if they're lower than, the $25,000 threshold, my suggestion would be to go back to the department and to say, hey, look, you may wanna consider putting working with the town and putting an article on to address it, if it's a thing that costs
Okay.
$6,000, we're only looking at items that should be 25,000 and greater, in terms of a price tag, and that have a useful life of, greater than, what is in the bylaw.
Okay, do we have a
No,
25,000?
it's 35, I misread it.
Oh, because we should bounce those back right away, then,
Right, yeah,
right?
I would agree. I would
We
agree.
don't even look at them. If you run across one like that, don't even look at it. We'll
I
just
mean,
bounce it
I
back.
was also, kind of making notes on the side and, I think priority should be if there's anything that's mandated,
Mhm.
we need to get those taken care of immediately or an emergency situation where, if a building needs something that's going to deteriorate quickly,
Mhm.
that we may wanna look at,
So,
like.
critical repairs or?
Critical repairs, mandated
So, I mean, it sounds like
age.
maybe we could have two categories right there. So, you know, like a critical repair, obviously, because, you know, it's been, you know, hasn't been dealt with in some time. And then one where there may be a mandate requirement from the state. You know, it may hit both categories, okay? It may be deteriorating and there's a mandate from the state, so it hits both spectrums. One may just have a mandate from the state that just has never been addressed, and we need to address it. So you may have, you know, two possible categories there.
Yeah, and then the other one you wanna add into that too is what are we gonna get fined on?
Right, so a mandate, you know, could potentially mean, you know, we haven't addressed it, and the mandate could lead to a fine.
Right, and that's like, you know, anything that I think would be to deal with the wastewater treatment is something that would take precedence, because that's a fining situation.
Mhm.
And that's one that happens to be one of the cheapest ones here.
Dan, are you on the committee?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Not in an official capacity yet?
Yeah,
What do we need to
But-
vote him in?
No, he needs
It needs to be appointed by the moderator.
appointment by the
Oh, okay.
moderator and then sworn in.
Okay.
So, do you wanna contact Dario Nardi to do that, or could,
Yeah.
that'd probably be appropriate?
I don't even
I think
have a
that's the
contact
problem.
for him.
Right on the website, there's his email address, just right there. It's-
Your town moderator?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll pull it.
under our volunteer and,
Yes.
So just right off the bat, the whole packet from Sharon, there's no dollars, there's no detail, there's no cost associated with any of these, so I don't think that I
You
can
familiar
even
with
review these
the
at
main
this
website
point.
here?
Okay.
yeah,
Go
she,
to
And I know
here.
she's busy down there, and I know there's a lot going on, but
she doesn't have any, type of, idea in terms of costs.
If you,
I
Just
mean,
pull that
we
up.
can't even look at them because we don't know
Okay.
whether
His
they're under 25.
email.
Yeah, don't waste any time on
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
we
not sure how you got
need to
listed
be
there, but-
efficient and.
Yeah,
it's there. and
So-
There, and then-
there won't be any reason for
just
Dario
gonna
to
let-
decline you, I mean.
So tell her, I
and,
mean,
so
fill
that's
out
just
the
the
form,
process, go to
right?
the,
Right.
go to that volunteer
Clearly says
employment
it right, you
opportunities.
know.
yeah,
Go
on
to
any
the-
of, yeah.
And
Go to the.
I can't imagine
this
a
one
hot
here.
water heater is gonna be
Capital
more than
planning
25 grand,
invitation.
right? I mean,
I wouldn't think so, I would think maybe, you know, maybe $5 or $6 grand.
a loading dock, that could be more, but senior center roof would be more. Heating and cooling unit would be more.
I did get a,
The bulkhead, maybe.
so
Okay.
the roof, I did get a quote on it, and the roof quote was 79,000, so we could put that on there.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
So
but
yes,
she
so
needs
this
to
one-
fill this out.
This one
This
here
is,
can
it's
be
not your
rejected
job.
right away.
So we're just saying that this, all the things under the senior center, don't have any amounts, any descriptions. You know,
This one here from the police is under 25,000, so you may wanna,
okay,
Was that for the Glocks?
yeah.
Yep.
okay.
Same thing for the server and firewall, that's 14,000.
Handguns
Tasers at
are not,
20,000.
are those capital?
Well, it's only $6,000.
Yeah, okay.
Well, there's others though, there's, the server and firewall at 14,000,
Mhm.
and tasers at 20,000, those are all under the limit.
Okay.
So I think that those all need to get
Okay.
turned back and,
Mhm. Asked if it be put on for articles.
yeah. If we're going by that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
25,000.
Do we want to add columns to this spreadsheet that would be mandated critical repairs?
So under under the priority, so what I was thinking is that what defines a level A priority project? So you may want to define what a level A priority project would be. You may want to define what a level B priority project will be, a level C, D, and so on and so forth. Within those definitions would, could be, is critical for the, for the need. Maybe because it's mandated, maybe because, there's a grant that's out there that would expire, that could cover a portion of the cost. So within the priority is where you wanna have like a rubric of how you know, it qualifies for that. And that's important, because we want buy-in from all of the departments, on a real good capital improvement plan, because we don't want people to come back and say, well, you're always giving money just to the police or just to the fire department. We want people to see that it's thought out of, and these are why we come up with the you know, the prioritization of these projects.
Okay, so, well, back to my original point then, I guess what maybe we should do is a column called categories,
Yep,
and we can do like M for mandated, right? Maybe R for repairs,
mhm,
G for grant, and then that column could have these different letters in it, and then put a key down at the bottom. And then we can go, because that would be the first step. So if it's, you know, a repair and it's grant sensitives, it would get a G and an R, and then maybe the priority would be A,
right,
based on that.
right.
Right.
You could do it that way, sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think we need to identify, so what are the criteria that matter? And as Dawn already mentioned, mandated, whether it's fine inducing or not, if something's mandated, it's mandated. And we
Yeah.
have no choice about it. It, by default, it has to be a priority or a category A project.
Mm-hmm.
Within the, so say you have 3 mandated things, and they all, and it comes up to an exorbitant amount of money, and we just simply can't do all 3.
Right,
Now you have to prioritize within the category A,
right, yeah,
which one, which 2, or can all 3 be done?
yeah. So A1, A2, A3, or something
Exactly.
like
So
that.
what
Okay.
criteria are we gonna use to establish categories? And I think we've already identified one
These categories
is
here.
mandated.
And the other thing you gotta look at is risk.
Okay. Sure.
So,
So I'm gonna say, instead of trying to come up with categories right now, when you go through this, think about, so we already have 4 without even looking, because you may go through one of these and say, oh, you know, there's another thing we should add, right? I don't know that we're gonna be able to really come
You
up
know,
with,
project funding could be a category.
Yeah.
I have
Project.
that funding mechanism as a
Right.
way to call.
you wrote it, Rich,
Isn't
as
that grant?
grant
I put-
time,
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
so,
I mean, there's a time sensitivity to some grants,
yeah.
so I see where you're going with that.
I mean, if you have a better word for it, I'm fine with that.
So to answer Rich's question about project funding, could be meaning like, for example, you know, there's, on a particular fiscal year, maybe there's limited free cash available. If free cash was gonna be an option of the use of funding that project. Maybe there's a limited number that year of free cash. Maybe there is a grant that is currently available that would cover a portion of that. Maybe that there is, we're doing a bond, and we could incorporate that within the bond to pay for that debt issuance
Okay.
that year. There may be, you know, so.
So just in general, anything that involves money
yeah.
that's
That-
critical.
Yeah, that may be,
bonding.
you know,
Okay.
it may move up in the criteria
Yeah.
based on the funding
So we can
availability.
get rid of that.
Yeah, just
So
funding
we'll
time
just-
sensitivity.
You're right.
We can give
right.
that an F, right, funding.
Yeah.
So can you just expand more on the risk? Like, there's a lot of risks involved in any, but what do you mean by a category for risk?
Basically, a category for risk, what's the risk to the town if we don't do this? You know, kind of like a cost-benefit analysis with the risk attached to it, because you need to know, is this gonna benefit us if we do it at this term or this time, or can we afford to wait to do it? You know,
So maybe, like,
Like-
if
like-
material costs are going up, it would be
Right.
better to do this little project.
what's it gonna cost me for this
Because
piece of pipe?
2 years from now,
I deal with this
it'll be
all the time
double.
in my business, you know. I can say, I'm gonna buy this pipe today for a project.
Yeah,
And if I don't book it and buy it at this price today, tomorrow it's gone up $3,000.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, you
Right.
gotta look at that, that's the risk benefit that you gotta look at.
okay.
Impact on service, to the public.
Okay.
You know, maybe it may be within that category. And what I mean by that is that if we are, you know, if there's a need for a heavy-duty piece of equipment that's going to plow roads, okay, and it's notoriously known for breaking down, and we don't have the capability of having that equipment out when it snows to maintain the roads, well, there's gonna be an impact on service to the residents of the town, because either, number one, they're gonna have to wait longer to get the service that they need of plowing the streets and making sure they're safe and passable, or we're going to have to potentially hire a third-party contractor to come out and plow, which would cost the town a little bit more money.
Mhm.
So, you know, you may want to look at impact on services into the public. And that could go, you know, for any piece of equipment that, you know, may be in need of some type of refurbishing.
Okay.
You may want to look at a category that maybe there's something in here that would promote economic development, right? So, you know, we're thirsty for new business to come into town. Maybe there's a slip in here from the highway department, and I'm just using this as an example, that will repave or refurbish some of the major roads in the downtown area, or may extend some roads where there could be more housing development to create more housing that would, again, increase economic development in some capacity. So you may want to weigh that at some avenue. You know,
Okay.
I noticed in here that in some of the highway requests, it was more along the lines of equipment. But, you know, we may also want to encourage to Jeremy to put in something, a slip for looking at addressing a road project. You know, trying to address some type of either resurfacing or, you know, putting in some new, you know, drainage or something that would help continually maintain the roads above and beyond what we get either from Chapter 90, or if we get creative with a grant like from CDBG and we address it in a neighborhood. We really don't have a line in the budget besides Chapter 90 money and creative ways we get with grants to address for, you know, the maintenance and upkeep of roads.
Mhm. Okay.
And that could be built into a project that comes into town. Because, you know, again, we do this a lot, where we're a general contractor, we go into the area to work, we'll make a deal with the town, and, you know, we get to do this work here for you on such and such, and this is what the cost is for this. And what we'll do in benefit to you is fix this park up for you, or install a new park, or maybe change the intersection here, repave it, put new lights in, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
you know. And then a lot of contractors are amenable to that.
Okay.
I would, you know, for the mandate one, you know, you may want to consider calling it legal obligations and mandates.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
That's basically what it is.
that's what
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
is
Yeah.
intended by that. So, remember what we're doing here is, any given project, however many criteria we establish, if it's 3, if it's 10, the idea behind it is, so how do you evaluate that? So just because something's a mandate, well, in other words, mandates get an inordinate amount of weighting. Every criteria gets a weighting associated with it. So out of 100%, say, or however, whatever scale you want to use, it doesn't matter at all. So mandates get a 65% weighting,
Mhm.
and then overall fiscal impact or funding, whatever language we apply to it, that impacts the project half as much. So say 60%. So we give, then you put a 30% weighting to overall, to funding impact. And then benefit to residents or benefit to town at large, however we word that as a criteria. I think, I don't know if we really got, or risk maybe, whatever. Let's go with the risk one.
Mhm.
So risk, that's important, so that gets, as much weighting as the funding. You get the idea. And
Yeah.
now, I think ideally, those weights would all add up to
100%,
100%.
right.
So you have to
Yeah.
play with those weightings a little bit. Because if you have two projects, one may not have any mandate, but it might be,
Just as important as
It-
the one that has a
but
mandate
it-
on it.
Yeah,
right, right. So the mandate, on the other hand, may overwhelm the other project. And so that project, so when the fire department can't get their new toy,
I know. You're here, we gotta pick on you.
Rodney Dangerfield, they get no respect. When they can't get their new equipment and they come to the board and they say, we really need this equipment, I know, sorry, but there's a legal obligation on the town to put in a new screw pump in the water department,
Mhm.
or whatever it might be. That way we can objectively say, we're sorry, this is why you didn't get funded, it's gonna get it'll get a bump next year, because we had to push it, or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I think, so that's the idea, it's not just to put an M and a G on it, or an F, because everything's gonna be, get an F, right, the funding impact, or the impact of the town. But so also with the funding, if it's only 50,000, do you weight that higher than the $500,000 project, or do you weight the?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe also in the formula would be like a dollar range,
Yeah,
right? 25 to 50, 50 to 100, I don't know what we'd come up with.
so within that weighting, say funding gets I'm just arbitrarily making up numbers, if the funding gets a 30% weighting, then lower priced items that we can fiscally manage readily get, I don't know how the formula. I don't know how we
Yeah,
categorize the formula, so,
I'm respectfully disagreeing with that,
okay.
because by paying for the little things now that we can afford, you're just pushing off those bigger
The
things.
big
You
things.
just keep
Mhm.
pushing
Okay,
off, keep
fair
pushing
enough.
off. So I
Yeah.
don't know if we should, personally, I wouldn't weight the amount of a project.
Okay,
I'd list the projects, weight them based on, are they mandated? Is there a time sensitivity where we're gonna lose grant funding, or we
Yep.
have free cash that's going to, well, free cash will just roll to the next year. But, are there funds available with a time restriction
Mhm.
on them?
We may not
Okay.
have as much free cash one year as we will the next year.
okay.
And so, when those scenarios come up, that's when, funding, may be sparse that fiscal year. We may not have as much flexibility that fiscal year. And this will be kind of like a living document where there will be modifications made every fiscal year.
Mhm.
And so, it's depending on our financial conditions as well,
So I can certainly come up with a spreadsheet if we pick a letter for each of these, no
Mhm.
matter how we have them. And then we can hash out at some point how these are weighted,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can get a score from that.
Sure.
So I don't know if it's gonna fit on this, but we can,
Yeah, right.
I could, I
And,
mean, this is a first cut at this.
right,
too,
and
so-
what we may want to do is take that list that we have there and incorporate it into like some type of instructions, so that, it's already designed right here. Well, this is our rating criteria instructions, and then it just gets incorporated onto that sheet, because you may have a sheet that becomes too big
Yeah.
and for everything. So we may want to turn it into like an instructional sheet that may just have a chart that will explain how the rating system works.
Mm-hmm.
So, in this hierarchy of criteria, I just want to kind of confirm what we've
Talked about.
both talked about and maybe agreed to. I think we all agree with the, we'll call it, if, just for save a few syllables, mandates
Yep.
or legal obligations. The criteria of risk and what's included in there, what do we mean by risk is, what would be the impact to the town if we don't do it, is effectively what
Mhm.
you're saying. So that would be things like maintenance, getting new roofs on, et
Yeah.
cetera.
Mhm.
So critical repairs.
So, or critical repairs,
Mhm.
Well, I don't know, Dan, how does, I think you suggested risk, so how would that differ, like in
Critical
a,
repairs will fall into risk, because now you're
Yep.
impacting the building itself.
right,
If
so I'm
it's
thinking about
town-
like the pointing or the window, just like this stuff, right?
Right.
So then what would be risk that doesn't include?
This here, really, it's facial, there's a word I want, I can't.
superficial?
Superficial,
Mm,
okay, that can be addressed on a smaller budget at a later time, okay, because this can all be general labor to do this, okay, so the risk isn't up there that high. If you're adding a structural level to it, that's where your risk is gonna be. If it's
Okay.
gonna compromise the structural integrity of something, that's
Okay.
what you need to look at.
so this would be a critical repair, but you wouldn't put it under risk?
No.
Okay, I get it, all right,
So-
so maybe like the chimney,
Chimney is a
critical
structural-
repair, and what risk might be high?
Yep, if that
Okay.
falls over,
Yeah,
what's the
okay.
impact of that?
Okay.
The repointing of the brick, again, this is superficial right here, but what's causing it behind it is the water is getting in.
Right.
So the repointing of the brick, I would
Would
guess,
be-
would be a critical project.
Anything-
And then the repair of the cosmetic stuff.
Anything to do
Okay.
with destructibility of, the constructability or the structural integrity of the building, that envelope
Yeah.
would be in that risk factor.
Okay, so the repointing would be critical repair and risk?
Yeah,
Right,
because
you
you're
get
just
two letters.
deteriorating the entire building
Yeah,
from that
All right, see,
situation.
I think that this'll work pretty well, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Each project will get at least one category
Mhm.
and might get
Yeah.
2 or 3 depending
Yeah,
on.
so project funding is also something that was talked about,
Mhm.
slash, fiscal impact, right?
Mhm.
So if you're dealing with project funding, well, just because the chief's here, I'm gonna pick on him, but he's got an $850,000 request. Well, that $850,000 request for a new engine is gonna, blow up our budget, and we're gonna have to do, a potential 2.5 override in order to honor that request.
Mhm.
Well, there's just no capability, we can't do that. There's no room to do that, so we don't have the funding to do that at this year. We may have the funding to do it over the course of 3 years, but just not in one shoot, one swoop. So, those are things that you may wanna look at, project funding, fiscal impact. If a project is going to put us, off of a financial cliff, obviously, we wanna, look at it before we just approve it.
Okay, so is well, I want to separate fiscal impact versus project funding.
Okay,
Because project funding, we were talking about, like, a grant's gonna run out.
right.
But fiscal impact is what you're saying, like, it's too much, or
Mhm.
we,
We just
whatever the
can't-
cost is,
We
we can't do it right now.
can't do it at that fiscal year.
But is that a category, or is that gonna be something?
I don't think so. I wouldn't consider that a category.
Yeah, I think it would be something.
I don't think that should dictate the priority. I think that we should look at it and see
Yeah.
what the funding mechanisms are and how we can fund that project over whatever time period. but I don't think that that should dictate the priority of it, just because it's a
Right.
large financial project.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Well, it might, though, it might influence the priority, but I don't know if it's a category. I guess I'll say that, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
we may-
that could be.
We
That
may
could be.
say it's too much, so we're gonna bump it down on the priority for now. Right? But I don't know that it would get its own categories. So I'm kinda like I'm half with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The
That
idea,
makes sense.
the idea what I'm thinking of is, so mandates, whatever we call the categories, mandates, funding, and risk, we just took that as an example. If we feel mandates should get weighted at 50% and funding at 25 and risk at 25. So you have a project here and a project here, and there's no mandate on this project. The funding or the fiscal impact, whatever you want to call it, it's 5 out of 10. This is on a 10 scale.
Mhm.
And the risk is a 10. So big risk, but you only weight it at 25%. So 25% of 5, 1.25, 25% of 10 is 2.5. This project gets a score of 3.75. But this project, it's a mandate. So you give it a 10. It's mandated. And it's at 50%, so it gets a 5. So it's already overwhelmed to this project. If you had to choose between these two projects, you have to do this one. It gets a total score of 6. This has a score of only 3.75. The chief comes in and complains that he can't get what he needs. We say, we're sorry, this is a mandate, we have to do it. It's scored out higher than yours. There's nothing personal in here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, the only caveat would be if this one here, so say this one was a 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10,
Yep.
it'd be a 5, right?
Okay,
And then this one was only a mandate, it would be a 5. So what if we make this one 51%, these ones each 24 and a half?
that's fine.
I
That's what,
think this should always, personally, a mandate should,
it has to trump
it
everything.
has to trump, because we have to take care of those projects, because it's going to
Okay.
have other fiscal repercussions to the town. It's going to.
So.
But I see, I
in
like where you're
addition-
going with that, yeah.
Well, first of all, either it's a mandate or it's a not. You can't have a 5 on a mandate,
But there
so-
could be a situation where we know something's coming down the pipe. So next year, we know the state's gonna implement this, so
Mhm.
we could give it a 5.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, you could, so whether it's a 0, whether it's a binary option between mandates or not, you still use the same rating system.
Right.
Okay.
You still score each component on a 1 to 10 scale, apply that weighting to it, then you get an objective, in theory, you get an objective score. The 5 is trumped by the 6, and so if we have this amount of dollars available to us, we have to do the 6.
Right.
And now, you could go back, so you get your final listing, 18 projects, we can do 3 of them. Number 4 on the line comes in and complains, why can't number 4 be done? Maybe we can look at it, maybe we can re-weight it. It's a
Mhm.
living document. We
Yeah.
say, we see you've made a good point here, maybe we should bump the risk up to the town. We scored it a 5, maybe it is actually a 10, and that would put it up into the 3rd place category. If funding's equal, it's an easy thing. If the funding's not equal, then we gotta look at it a little further.
Okay. The only thing is, with a scale from 1 to 10, it's really subjective.
It is,
So,
you're right.
like, a risk,
You're
what's
right.
the difference between a risk of 3 and a risk of 4?
Okay,
Maybe we can compress it, maybe 1, 2, 3, so low, medium, high, I don't know, just, because,
fair enough. That's what we're trying to hash out. Is
yeah.
What's the system that works best?
Okay,
And maybe we can, maybe we're not gonna have opportunity to, come to a conclusion right at this meeting, but maybe that's additional homework. And maybe as we look at some of these actual requests, it'll help get our heads into categories, how to
yeah,
put, and maybe we can make up our own little rating system,
Mhm.
kind of play with it a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe a 1 to 10 scale isn't appropriate, maybe 1 to 5, maybe 1 to 3, like you said.
yeah.
And then I think we'd have, an opportunity, I presume next week,
Oh, yes.
to yeah, because we gotta move along. And and, you know, be able to propose a real rating system or prioritization system.
So if you
And
wanna
to
play.
and just, sorry, Rich, but to caveat off of what Ray has been indicating, you know, a mandate could also be, you know, a mandate that's coming down the pike, right?
Yeah.
So the town may have, from the state, on the state level, 3 years to come into compliance, 5 years to come into compliance, or we may have to be in compliance tomorrow.
Yeah, what you're looking at is that red letter.
So, right, so if it's a mandate that's 3 years out versus a mandate that's, you know, you're supposed to be doing this today,
Okay,
I think you can prioritize your mandates.
Yeah.
okay, so if you want, what I can do, like what's the minimum, I could put together a spreadsheet. So we're gonna do, no, the categories are here. So basically, I could give you a spreadsheet that, and we'll put all the categories on here. And maybe the weight will be at the top, right? And then, do you wanna do 1 to 10, 1 to 3, 1 to 5? Any opinions on
It-
weighting these?
Pick one. It doesn't matter. You just change it by changing one cell in your spreadsheet.
Well, yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's this, the numbers you type in.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. If we do a 1 to 10 and we decide to go to a 1 to 5, we just have the numbers.
Okay. All right, so I can give you a spreadsheet, and if you put a 5 in here, then it'll,
Yeah.
you know, and a 1 and a 0, right? It'll give you a score based on this number and the weighting, and then
Yeah,
add them up.
exactly.
And then you can play with it, and you can go through these, I mean, you know, I don't know if you need to do every one of them, but if you do a good handful of them, right?
Yep.
So, sorry to sidebar, but I have to leave in a few minutes, I told Jim.
Okay.
I didn't know if we wanted to reject any of these off the bat, so they can maybe have them to us for the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, we are, you know Sharon's are all
Yeah,
rejected, right?
I had marked that, and then I noticed that,
In the fire department, are we just gonna bounce it?
there were 3.
No, we're just gonna
These
accept
guys,
that.
the one guy that does show up.
I know, right?
3 out of the 3 on the police. department.
That means don't show
Yeah.
up next time.
I was gonna reject those
Okay, so
because
hold
of
on.
that. This-
It makes you feel better, Adam, we're getting rid of a bunch of fire, police department ones, because they're,
You only hurt the ones you love.
so
Um,
which ones are
The
those?
Glock firearm at 6,000. I think they'll last 3 or somewhere around the last. Yep.
Okay, 6,000,
Yep, the next one was the server and firewall at
14,
14,000.
20.
And tasers at 20, they all didn't meet the limit of 25,000.
okay.
Or the minimum of 25,000, so I would.
So everybody on the same page, so grab the police,
Police.
so, and go like, 5 or
Okay.
6 pages in,
Okay.
starting with Glock.
Yep.
So that's, exit out. Right, it's,
Okay.
unless you just wanna pull the pages out. And then server and firewall, tasers,
Those are the only 3.
so those 3. Okay, so that's police.
And then
Okay.
the only other one that I saw was the Board of Selectmen, because there's no total cost, we have no idea what the cost is. So we can't look at it, because we don't know if it's gonna be under 25,000, over 25,000, what's the cost?
Oh, it's definitely gonna be over 25,000.
Do we know any, I mean, you have it by square foot, but is there any,
Yeah, this needs a
any
total.
more detailed
So
total
what we're
cost?
gonna do is, what we'll do is, we're going to probably come back with a, I'm gonna have the, building commissioner take a look at the building, to look around the aspect of it, but this was put in just so that you have an idea of what the square footage amount cost would be, on this. I mean, this particular building is quite large. So this would be well over the $25,000 threshold. However, you know, there may be another component to this where we would also have to probably retain maybe like a construction engineer to do an analysis of the exterior of the building as well. So that's gonna be, that'll be an update probably for next week. We'll have an update on that.
Okay, I pulled it for now because
Yeah.
same as Sharon's, it doesn't have a total cost, I can't look at it.
Yep.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
all right,
So
so
that's just
we'll get rid of that one
kind
for
of
now.
being fair across all
Mhm.
departments.
Nope, that's good. Okay, so what do we got? So how about, water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant? Those, okay, those are all, the amount is there. It looks like there's enough description probably,
Yeah,
so I think that's a keeper. So we can keep that. Fire department?
Okay.
Those are all, okay, they're all over. I think we can keep those. Everybody good so far? And then highway. I like how people have like supporting documents too, that's good. Okay, I think highway's good.
Highway's okay.
Okay, so basically, selectmen, senior center, and some of the police.
We'll get, and then there's also another, I'm waiting on a quote, for, computers as well. So that will be also, brought as a request at some point. I'm waiting on, there's some other moving parts to the computer thing to see if we have a new managed IT company, coming in, which hopefully we'll have a decision on that soon. If there is one, it'll be based on their pricing and seeing if they can do leasing versus buying. So we're still waiting on that information as well. So there'll be another one coming in.
Okay. Should we reach out to senior center and police, or do you wanna?
No, I can do that, yep.
Okay, all right.
And then, I'm sorry that I have to leave, I mean. you
No,
guys
that's
can-
okay.
can
I mean, I think
continue
we've-
the meeting without me.
Anything else? Okay, so we're gonna kick number 4 to start really next week, once everybody has a chance to look at these.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then, okay, so what about the next meeting?
Looking at next week?
Yeah, right?
We were gonna meet, finance was gonna meet next Wednesday
Wednesday, yeah.
at, when does the training get done? At 3:00?
3:15.
At 3:15. It's gonna be a fairly brief meeting, I suspect.
Yeah.
We
I have
could
a
still,
s-
can we still meet at 4 next week?
No, I have CDAC, which is gonna be the master plan as
Yeah.
well as grant. So
Okay, so
can we go to
we
Tuesday?
can do Tuesday instead.
Sure.
Yeah,
yeah.
So at 4 o'clock?
Yep.
Yeah.
We can do
Yeah,
Tuesday.
finance couldn't do Tuesday, they went to
Yeah.
Wednesday, so we'll just
Yeah.
flip with them.
Okay.
4
Dan?
o'clock next Tuesday?
4:00 Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 26th.
And then Dario's information's online.
Yep.
So,
He showed me what it was.
Okay.
Next meeting
So
here.
I'll work on the spreadsheet. I'll get that, try and get it out in the next day or two. And if you think of more categories, let me know.
Okay.
But I think we don't want like
You
15.
know, you'll drive yourself crazy.
You gotta-
You know,
like, let's,
if you can get, maybe 3 categories, 3 to 5 categories,
This is KISS.
5 categories, I think it's.
okay.
you
So
know.
right now we have 6.
Yeah.
So
Do you
unless
still
you
have a few
really-
minutes or not? Do you have a few minutes right now?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not gonna make a motion to adjourn, but
Okay.
all I plan on talking about, just so you know, because I don't want you to not be part of the discussion here, but we'll just hash out some of these categories a little bit better.
Okay,
And I'll send out the minutes so you know if we decide anything, and I don't think we're gonna necessarily settle anything.
okay,
But just to continue the discussion about categories, so we can get our heads around that a little better.
okay.
But it's 4:47, so we don't wanna hold
I
you up.
appreciate it.
Okay?
All right,
All right.
thank you guys.
Thanks,
So
Don.
next Tuesday,
See you
we'll,
next
Thank you.
Tuesday.
Yep.
look
Yeah.
forward to seeing it undone.
Yes.
Okay. Just as a courtesy to Chief, we're not gonna, you're not gonna have to defend anything here.
No, that's fine.
But if you just wanna stay around, you're
No, I was
welcome.
just curious on how it was gonna, I was around when they did the previous capital planning, and I
Yeah.
for what it's worth, I agree with what Don said in some ways. I think that what was happening before was some of the low-bearing fruit was getting picked off.
Too readily.
It was easier.
Yeah.
And one thing I would just say, like, I understand that, and this goes for any departments, but like an $850,000 price tag, that's a huge price tag. We understand that, but You know, I just think the rating system there is a good idea in many different ways, but those big ticket items, highways, trucks, those kind of things, just because it can't be funded obviously
Yeah.
in 1 year, I think the best thing that, you know, they did going forward, when we knocked the other ones off, was putting some aside and starting that
Right.
process over many years, as opposed to ignoring it altogether, because that's what was happening before with some
Yeah.
of those big ticket items. And then, you know, an engine that is gonna go another 10 years that really can't, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
so
it is
part
what-
of the process, I think, is, okay, it's gonna cost $850. Over how many years do we wanna fund it?
Yeah.
So we're gonna do, it'll last 4 years, so let's put away 4, or it'll
Yep.
last 3, so let's do 3, right? So we can figure out how to fund it over time,
Yeah.
so that we're there when you need to replace it.
Excellent. No, like I said, I just figured I'd pop in and see how things are going, and if you need to talk to me.
You're welcome to stay, I just didn't want to hold you up
No,
if
no,
you had
no,
something
I-
better
I-
to do,
I do
but.
have training tonight, so that's fine. If you're not
Okay.
gonna do anything, I'll head that way, because I got some things to get ready for that, so I look
All right.
forward to talking to you guys later.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks.
Thanks for being a good sport, too. He gets kicked around so much.
Mhm.
He's a good doobie.
Yes.
So, okay, so, yeah, I just want to note, Don, just to catch, I'm learning how to do minutes. Don departed 4:47, just so it's noted. And so we still officially have a quorum here.
Can't vote on
We-
anything.
I don't think.
I don't think there's
He's
anything.
not sworn in,
No,
and I'm
there's
not a
nothing to
voting
vote on.
member.
Except adjourning. We won't
Right,
be able to adjourn.
Right.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think there's anything to vote on,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
just,
yeah.
but just so we don't have to end a public session, so
Mhm.
people know what we're saying here. Okay, so, I'll confess, not confess, disclose the, Jim had pointed us to, hold on a minute, I have to open my computer up and I'm having a brain cramp here.
Password.
It's my anniversary date. I should remember it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so I'm using the Springfield Capital Planning Committee's criteria, and they used 8. Some of
okay,
which
it's a lot,
we've,
But okay.
yeah, which I'm not saying we have to do theirs, but just to further try to flesh out how we can rate things. I liked Don's suggestion that mandates get a 51% rating,
Mhm.
because then it should, if it's mandated, it should trump everything else. It'd have to, right?
Mhm.
There's no way you could get more. If every other
Yeah.
category got a 10 or 5, whatever scale we use, it would never trump a mandate.
I think so.
It couldn't, could it?
I don't know.
Uh,
I mean, if you gave,
No, if
mandate
the
a
most,
one.
if the most that all others added up to was 49%, and they were all, even if they were all 10s,
There's no way it could
there's
get
no way
higher.
it could be higher than a mandate.
Even if you gave a mandate of 1,
Oh, okay. Well, a 1 mandate, like this is like, right, in 3 years, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
implement a $500,000 water filtration system. Then, yeah, then the mandate of 1, of course, but no, I'm talking about a real mandate, like a 10.
like we need to do this
We need
now
to,
because
we need
we're
to do
gonna
this
get-
in the next fiscal year.
Okay,
Or we're
all
gonna
right.
get
Yeah, yeah,
fined,
okay, then,
then, yeah.
Yeah.
So 51%, that's, I think we can,
so once that gets a 10, yeah, I think the others,
And then within that category, like just to pick on wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
okay, You got one here that's 35,000, that's looking for a pump and a sensor to control the chlorine discharge into the river, okay? Does that necessarily rate a 51% on the scale, or can that go lower in that category? So you have another one here that's 56,000, and it's what? It's introduce specified chemical into plant influence steam to reduce copper. The process, it's a little bit more expensive to do this, but all of these are required to
Mhm.
do to maintain the discharge into the river, so you're not into the fines or the
trouble with the
violations.
trouble with the
Yeah.
DEP.
Okay?
Yeah.
But you can weight it so that this one gets done, this is priority over this one, and this one's priority over that one.
Yeah, so
So-
in the mandated category, you could say one of those gets a 10, maybe
Right.
another gets an 8.
Right,
Or they all get 10s on the mandate, but then in the other categories, what's the impact to the town? What's the impact, what's the benefit to the town, what's the risk?
yep. which-
Sure.
That's
Okay.
what I'm saying, then those you can value different, because if something gets just because something's mandated a 10, it doesn't mean you have to ignore the other categories.
Right.
No,
Yeah,
that's true.
right.
Yeah, you can,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the beauty of having a category and a weight to it,
Yeah.
to kind of still, in theory, objectively fine-tune the
Right.
priority, the ultimate priority. So, we've identified mandates or legal obligations. We've also not formally decided, but for the working discussion right now, 51% weighting on that.
Yeah.
That'll help us make sure that those get that
Addressed quicker.
well, they get the prioritization of a real need. What Springfield had done, their mandates,
It wasn't as high.
it wasn't as high. Again, not that again, I'm only referring to that just so, because this is something they've been doing for years.
So wait, what does that mean? Their mandate has a different percentage, or they
Yes.
Yeah,
just
they
say
were at
it's-
15%, right?
Give me
Oh,
one
so they
sec.
did this kind of weighting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did it similar to this. That's, like I say, I just want to fully disclose, I'm not so wonderful that I came up with this on my own. I'm basically picking.
Come
it up.
on, you did,
But
right?
but I think it's I'll give Jim credit because he pointed me to it.
Yeah.
And Jim can't take credit because he didn't do this plan. He wasn't the capital planning guy over there. He just got to deal with the impact of it at one point, right?
Well, we were involved initially to set up some of
Something
this,
like
some
this.
of the structure of how programs were gonna be weighted, and we had to, either approve or disapprove of them, and
Mhm.
Yeah, the criteria for legal obligation was only 15%, like Jim
Yeah.
said. Yeah. So.
So first of all, can you they had 8, so what are we missing from theirs?
Okay. Well,
Or
let me
do-
just read down what they had.
Yeah, just read them out.
So they had the overall fiscal impact, and do you want me to read the
Fiscal
the-
impact. Okay,
And
so
then
yeah,
they
just
have a
read
little
'em
blurb.
first.
They have a little blurb after each one, which I'll include, so you get the.
Well, no, give us, just
Okay,
read the categories.
Overall
Just-
fiscal impact,
Yep,
impact on service to the public,
okay,
promotion of economic growth,
okay,
the mandates or legal obligations,
okay.
operation and maintenance impact. I'm going to say that's what we may be referring to as risk.
Or
Sure.
repairs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or critical repairs or
Yeah.
maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Relationship to other projects / coordination. And what they mean by that, if the project is multi-year, if it has different phases, have you considered that? So there could be to redo like you've had recently with some of the
neighborhood street up here.
the neighborhood
Mhm.
refurbishing of the
Phase one,
infrastructure.
phase two.
Yeah.
right.
So that kind of a thing. So how it coordinates with either other projects or within the project phases of completion, et cetera. Resiliency, improvement, and resolution. I don't know. Now they're
Okay.
getting a little obscure. The public perception of need. So in other words, I've referred to a couple
Mhm.
times a water filtration system. I know there's been tons of complaints about the water in town. I have no idea. I'm not trying to impugn the water district in any way. I'm just saying, I know there's been a lot of complaints about it. Is that the town's that's a separate entity from the town, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, water district, I'm not trying to implicate you. I'm just saying, if that was sometimes,
Yeah, I'm not-
sometimes water systems are town. Apparently we're not.
So,
I wouldn't wanna rate things on their attractiveness or something.
I
though,
know.
because-
I don't agree with that one.
well,
Yeah, okay.
I think where they were going with this is that if, for example, there's, every year they see, the highway department getting a plow truck, and people are saying, well, geez, you know,
Right.
how about, you know, some new sidewalks? How about something that you know, a new park? Something that everybody can enjoy, instead of we're just getting new trucks all the time?
Right.
Yeah, but then you rate, so the next time Jeremy comes with a truck request, then you're gonna rate the public perception really low. I don't know how, I mean, I think that's our job. We gave Jeremy trucks for the last 3 years, he's not getting another
Right.
truck or something like
My,
that, right?
my
We'll
personal opinion
do
about that
something
is
else.
that consideration really goes into the, where was it here? The impact on service to the public.
Right.
You could roll, so, for example, if parks, we really want to put some money into the parks, the public perception, you know, who could be against having nice parks? I think that rolls into service, is the public perception. They only rated it at 5%. They probably threw it in there as a
A gimme. Yeah.
well, and yeah, we're considering the public. Obviously, you're
Yeah.
considering the public. I mean,
Yeah.
that should be obvious. Maybe it's not. Again, this is Springfield. Maybe Springfield residents don't
Right.
feel their councils listen to them or their mayor listens to them. You know, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. I don't think we need that level of detail. We don't have.
Yeah.
You know, if we had $20 million to play with, we could
Right.
give that some
And,
weight.
and the reason why they have, I mean, this is just to get a taste, and the way I sent this
Yeah.
to Ray, to get a taste of how these plans are developed. You know, this type of detail, we're not gonna have to go into here, because we're dealing with a smaller pot of money that we're, you know,
And a smaller community,
in a
too.
smaller
I mean,
community.
in Springfield, there's probably way more intersecting
Oh,
of
sure.
activities,
sure.
right?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
you're,
it's
you're
just
talking about their
huge.
capital improvement plan,
The-
when I was there, was like $500 million. So, I mean,
Holy moly.
you know,
and they had requests in the hundreds.
hundreds of millions.
I think they had, I mean, the number of
Oh,
requests.
yeah.
I think they had
hundreds,
300 or 400 individual projects that they were rating. So the A page itself, there were like 3 or 4 A projects.
Yeah,
Then there was another 2 or 3 pages of B projects.
wow.
And they had C and D projects even that they,
Mhm.
you know, and it falls out of this rating system.
Yeah.
And so obviously they can maybe attend to probably 15% of the total number of projects. But they're still listed so that maybe next year, maybe every year they get a 10% boost just by aging out, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe they fall off after 3 years.
Right.
If they haven't changed in 3 years, maybe we don't really need this after all,
Mm.
that kind
Right.
of thing. That's all just
Yeah.
referential so that we can get our minds around it a little bit better. We don't need to be as intricate or whatnot. So I think just so we can get some verbiage around it, I think we're pretty clear on the mandate thing.
Mhm.
Do we want to call it fiscal impact?
Oh,
Or what do we want to call that? So for example, what I'm referring to in this category is, do you hear a vibration? Never mind, it's just, it's my aliens trying to, that's a private joke. I thought I heard some buzzing, like an alarm on a cell phone silenced. So, $500,000 project, there's a $400,000 grant available for it. We don't have to match $100,000. That's the fiscal impact, financial impact. That's the funding.
That's
So-
everything right there.
Yeah, so what's the language we want to try to, clearly that's a relative significant
Priority. yeah.
prior or category of consideration.
Yeah.
Well, we had a category called project funding, so, I mean, that could
Okay.
encompass anything.
Yeah,
So because of the way it's going to get paid for, is it a 10 or a 0?
right.
I mean,
Correct.
that's pretty much,
Right.
so either your example, or the grant's gonna run out, you know, this year, or, you know.
Right, if there's something that all we need to do is put up 10%, even if it's $1 million project, we better consider that. Because to leave $900,000 on the table, and we might have to, because it may just be, maybe the state comes up with something that we as a town don't prioritize, the state does, but we don't, And maybe we have to leave that $900,000 to another community, who knows?
Mhm.
I don't have an example to talk about, but,
Mhm.
so we'll call it project funding.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And do we want to take a stab at what weighting to give that?
Oh, God.
Do we want to give it a 20, everything has to add up to 100%. We've already used that criteria so that mandates trump everything else. A real mandate, a 10 mandate trumps everything else. Project funding, it should be significant.
Sure, sure.
Just, you want to throw
20%?
Want to throw 20,
Okay.
just, this is all a working discussion here. None of this is
Yeah.
cast in concrete, it's just an idea. So project funding, we'll say is 20%.
So what do we do? Okay. so-
Now, the other category, which we called risk. And risk was to encompass those things which are real maintenance needs or critical repairs.
So you wanna call that critical needs / risk?
Critical
Yeah,
needs, okay, critical needs / risk, that's the category. And if we gave that,
Well, okay, before we start this, can we
Okay.
get all our
Okay,
categories
sure,
down? Because
sure.
I can't.
know how to weight them until we get
Yeah,
that.
okay, so mandated project funding, critical needs / risk, service to public, right?
Sure, if, I'm okay with that.
I'm just looking at, then we had economic development, which frankly, I mean,
Just a question, do we want to call that fiscal impact? Or is that inherent, is the concept of fiscal impact inherent to economic development? Or is the concept of economic development maybe inherent into fiscal impact? I don't care, I'm just talking out loud.
no, I think it should be separate, I guess, because how we're gonna fund it or how we're gonna pay for it is very different than what it will do for, because economic development, the town may not get any money, but say we put in something that makes it more attractive for businesses to come in,
Okay,
Promotes economic development.
promotes economic.
So
I think
put-
the category should be promotes economic development.
Okay,
I'll concur with that, because fiscal impact actually is better developed under the project funding.
yeah.
So, let me just catch.
And what was the category before,
Project
Rich?
funding.
Service to public.
Okay,
Project funding and fiscal impact.
So 5 would be good. Can we,
So we got 1, 2, I just wanna,
you got 5 there, right?
service to
Mhm.
public, not impact to residents,
just,
service
keep it simple, right?
to public.
I mean, we
Yep.
can always add categories,
Yep.
but I would say we
Yep.
gotta start with maybe something
And,
simple.
okay, I
Yeah.
had service to public there. Fourth one was critical needs risk. Critical needs risk, okay, that was your third one.
And can you,
Should it be
Four.
services to public or just service to public?
well,
Services, it does, yeah,
Okay.
the verbiage will.
can you
will tighten
send
up.
out that document after the
Sure.
meeting?
Sure.
Okay, so then we can look at that again?
Mm-hmm.
And then we called the fifth category economic development. Yeah, I think that caught many of the same ones that were in the example we looked at, economic development.
Because I think it goes along with a lot of these 5 categories go along with a lot of the philosophy that I've been hearing through several different boards, right? Addressing the needs of mandates, okay? Impact, being financially responsible and accountable. What is the public, how is the public gonna get the services that they're looking for? How are we going to address critical needs in risk? And then, obviously, the town needs to promote economic development.
Okay.
So is there a way which we can, bring about our capital plan to promote all of these core initiatives that the town wants to improve upon?
Yep. And if you're willing, Rich, do you wanna just take do we wanna banter about how to weight things?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, I don't really know.
Okay,
This, based on now that we have 4, project funding almost seems
too
too
much?
high, yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, these would all be like 12.5%.
Yep.
So maybe that's
So-
15?
So go
Yeah.
15, 15, 10, and 10, what's that? That's 50. 15, 15,
10 and
10 and
9.
you know,
Yeah, I guess, so, project funding, so what's project funding again? How we pay for it?
yeah, do we have grants for it? Do we?
Critical,
We,
yeah,
we've,
okay.
we've already set aside $800,000 to that new fire truck that costs $900,000.
Yeah, okay, so that could be critical. Risk is high.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we could even do, like 9.5, 9.5, right?
Yeah, right. And those are all values you can plug into your spreadsheet and play with.
Right.
Yep.
And so, you know,
Okay.
this is also taking into consideration, you know, this plan of spending money, its rating is gonna have impact to the residents of the town, right?
Yep.
Service to the public, okay? So the public is at the table right now. They're at the table, they have a percentage of what, how the money's gonna be spent, it's gonna be weighted that way. So the residents are gonna have a weight in this, because if it has, you know, a service to the public, like a park project or a project that's gonna address streets or infrastructure or sidewalks, they're gonna have a weight in it.
Okay. All right, I mean, this is a good start.
Let me just capture what we got here. 51, 2 was 15, 15. Again, this is all just, Dan, do you think?
It's a hypothetical situation.
Yeah, any
Well, once I
any
send out the
comments right now?
spreadsheet, I mean, you can,
9.5.
these weights will be at the top.
Play with it?
So if
Yeah.
you wanna like, you know, make critical need/risk, you know, 25%, you could.
Yep.
After you get a couple projects in there, just to see how it looks.
How it changes the final listing?
Yeah, yeah.
On that note, before we go, Rich, I just want to confirm, so my notes here are appropriate before I send minutes out. Which, I just want to confirm which boards or departments we quote rejected.
Okay, so all of senior center,
Yep,
all of the one for selectmen. So senior center had a bunch.
yep,
Selectmen had one. And then for the police, it was anything under 25.
and then just
Which
those
was
three
three.
categories, I got
Yeah.
the sub ones, but I didn't get, okay, I just want to make sure.
And to caveat off of that, the selectmen will have some additional ones that we're waiting on some pricing for.
Yep,
And I will see if Sharon can get, you know, some additional information for the request that she had put in, and maybe she could resubmit.
okay, sounds good. Were there any departments that should have a capital plan that we didn't get? Anything come to mind? Did you ever get anything from the school?
The school gave us something to the selectmen about, in general, but nothing in detail.
Oh, yeah, we need, well, so check with Duff.
I
and
will
see
check
if
with
We
them.
should solicit the school, because I know they
Yeah.
have stuff
Yeah.
that they want to consider,
Yep.
or have us consider, I should
Mhm.
say. So if we could.
Now, the
So
school would be a little, you know, for Quabog, it would be a little challenging, because then we would have to work
Coordinate
with
with
West
West
Brookfield. But for
Yeah.
Warren, Community Elementary, we could, you know, obviously, you know, look at those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other major things?
I don't think so.
Did Parks, weren't they looking for a really large number in order to redo playground equipment?
So they had, they have an article, or they had an article last year, to start a capital stabilization, program for them to start looking at, improving a park on some of the playscapes. They put, there was an article on for $25,000 last year. There'll be another article on for $25,000 this year. So, I mean, theoretically, we could, I could have them fill out a slip for that $25,000 and put it into our plan going forward.
It wouldn't hurt just to be comprehensive.
Yeah.
That way,
Then-
they're being considered,
Right,
they're on the
right,
table.
right. And then that way,
They can't accuse anyone
Right,
of not considering
right.
them.
Yeah. It will be an
Some
article,
parks.
and what we can do also is that, when we're done with all this, we'll have a dollar amount, right?
Yeah,
Of how much it's gonna,
right.
how much improvements are needed. There may be $1
Right.
million here, or $2 million worth of improvements here.
Yeah.
And even though they want to do an article, or they're going to do an
Mhm.
article, what if the article gets defeated?
Right.
Then they've got the backup of us considering
correct.
it, and perhaps that
Mhm.
would, maybe it'd be a plan B that they could fall
Right.
back. If it's in place, they don't have to scramble.
Right,
Now, doesn't mean just because they submit it, they're gonna get it, but
right, right.
at least it's
the queue.
comprehensive consideration.
Right.
To not be part of it, if they're not being considered, they're not being considered.
Right,
And so the only way to be considered is to send in the request.
right, right.
Yeah,
Right, and
and,
they
and
can-
then they can withdraw it, or we
Right.
can, we can put it to bed ourselves
Mhm.
if it gets funded through an
Right,
article.
right.
Yeah.
And you may, at one of the funding mechanisms, it may be just noted on their article.
Sure, sure. And then we know how to dispose of it
Right.
at a future meeting, yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
They can also use it as part of the promotion on the town floor. Look, we went before capital planning, they consider it an A project, you know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
so.
Right.
it'll-
Sure.
it'll
That way
help.
they're covered in two ways.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, makes sense.
Any other departments? Nothing's coming to mind right now. I think that's all I've got.
Okay,
Make a motion that we adjourn.
is there a second? Second. All in
Well,
favor?
I mean, you really don't have a quorum to,
We
actually
can
do,
adjourn.
right? We actually do have a quorum, 2 out of 3.
Oh, yeah, we do.
We have
it's a
quorum,
5-member board, though.
but it's not filled.
Well,
Yeah, just-
The finance
for-
committee is
Okay.
also, the finance committee is also a 5-member.
Yeah,
board.
yeah,
So we
Yeah.
technically do have a quorum.
It's not like planning board where some decisions have to be,
yeah.
like you have to have 4 out of 5. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if only
Mhm.
4 showed up.
I thought it was, the structure of the board, so if you have 5-member board, you have to, in order to do anything, you need 3 members.
Yes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I'll tell you what, if Madeline Watazik and myself got together and talked about the finance committee stuff, I think we'd get busted for violating open meeting law.
I don't think so. How many members on finance?
Well, there technically should be 5.
5, yeah,
Yeah.
5, so you wouldn't have a quorum.
Yeah, you can't meet. Well, you can meet, but you.
Yeah, a quorum would
can't
be
open
3.
the meeting.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Anyway, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm just, yeah,
Yeah.
we're adjourned.
Okay.
All right.
Whether it's
sounds good.
formal or informal, we're adjourning.